class. Today we're going to look at multiplying decimals. Now, you'll do most of this on a calculator. I understand that multiplying and dividing decimals, you will do most of that on a calculator, especially going forward here at the University of South Carolina, Aiken. But there was at least one important premise I wanted to cover with the multiplication of decimals. Primarily here, I'm going to make it important to you, primarily here with dealing with money. Now, when we multiply with decimals, we keep the same number of decimal places that we have. Okay, so if I look at number 1, I have 16 cents times 6. Okay, now 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to bring the 3 up top. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. And 6 times 0 is 0. We have to decide where to put this decimal at. Now if I look at this whole problem, I have two things behind the decimal in the numerator, or the first term up here, and the second term that I'm multiplying by the 6 here, I don't have anything behind the decimal. So I'm going to keep these two decimal places, which means I'm going to go 1, 2 over, and my decimal is going to go right there. Okay. Now, number 2 says $4.45 times 6. So here, once again, I have two decimal places, dealing with money. Multiplying this times 6, we can do that multiplication. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 7. So I've got 27. I put the 7 down, carry the 2 up top. 6 times 4 is 24, 25, 26 if I add the 2. Now, because we have two things behind the decimal here, I need to keep two things behind the decimal here. So the 7 and the 0 will be behind the decimal there. I count 1, 2 over, and my answer is $26.70. Pretty easy so far, right? Now I have $3.79 times 4. So 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 7 is 28. Add the 3, 29, 30, 31. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 3 is 15. I have two things behind the decimal in this problem, so I'm looking at $15.16. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Number 4, I have $2.43 times 7. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. Plus 2 is 30. 7 times 2 is 14. If I add the 3, I get 17. Because I have two things behind the decimal place here, I need two things behind the decimal place here. So I'm looking at $17.01. Now, what happens here if I am multiplying by something with two numbers here? So I have a 10. 10's two places instead of just a single numeric number here. So I'm going to multiply it out. Remember, if you're multiplying by, I'm going to do the long way with 10, even though 10 is fairly simple and there is a shortcut method with it. I'm going to do the long way. 0 times 3 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 7 is 0. I then need to drop the 0. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 7 is 7. If I add those two together, I have two decimal places here, so this is where it would be. Now you could, I'll rewrite this one. You could very well do it this way, use the old trick. If you multiply them by 10, I can just go ahead and drop the 0, then multiply by the 1. So 3, 2, 7, two things behind the decimal place. I drop it there. That is very well okay. Alright, now, what would happen if instead of $7.20 times 6, it was $7.20 times 0.6. Okay, so I'm going to adjust question number 6 a little bit. If this was a decimal place here, so 0.6, I'm not going to erase the 0 back off because we don't even have to worry about multiplying it by the 0. So I'm just leaving it as 0.6. I would still multiply like normal. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 7 is 42. Plus 1 is 43. Now, if it was the case where I had a decimal in front of this 6 as well, I would have to account for all the decimals. So it'd be 1, 2, 3 places that I would have to move my decimal. So 1, 2, 3 would actually need to go there. Now obviously this isn't going to line up with the answer sheet because I adjusted this problem slightly. But this is what would happen if I had a decimal times a decimal, right? So I adjusted the worksheet a little bit. If I had a decimal times a decimal, you would have to count the decimal places in both locations, the top number and the bottom number, and add them together and move accordingly. Okay. All right. Right back to it. Number 7, I'm going to keep the problem the same. 6 times 950. I'm going to have 0, 0, put the 3 on top. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 3 is 57. 2 decimal places here. So I'm looking at $57. Okay. Now, what if here, I'm going to make it even more complicated. I'm going to adjust this problem too. I'm going to put 0.04 and multiply this. Okay, so 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 is 21. Now, how many decimals do we have total here? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 after adjusting. So technically, I'd need to have 4 things behind the decimal, so my decimal would go out front. Keep in mind that I adjusted this problem. I didn't have to multiply by the 0 that was in front of the 4 because 0 times anything is 0. And we'd have just essentially been adding 0 to this 2156. All right, let's look at number 9. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 1 is 31. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27. So I'm looking at $27.18. Okay, got 3 more to go. All right. What if I had, I'm going to adjust this one too, 1.8. Okay, I just want to show you just a few different problems. I know I took the worksheet, I altered it a little bit, but it's easier than creating a new worksheet. So we're going with it. Let's just throw some fresh stuff at you. 1.8. So I'm doing 6.09 times 1.8. Let's go ahead and multiply here. 8 times 9. 8 times 9 is 72. 8 times 0 is 0, plus 7 is 7. 8 times 6 is 48. I'm going to drop a 0 here because I'm done with that 8. 1 times 9 is 9. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 6 is 6. Okay, I'm going to add these 2 pieces here together. 2 and 0 is 2. 9 and 7 is 16. 8 and 1 is 9. 6 and 4 is 10. Okay, now I have to account for 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So 1, 2, 3. So it's going to look like 10.962. Like I said, I adjusted that one, so it's not going to match the answer key. But I wanted you to see what would happen in this scenario as well. Now I have 654 times 9. So 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 5 is 45. Plus 3 is 48. 9 times 6 is 54. Plus 4 is 58. Okay. I have 2 decimal places here, so I need to move it 2 decimal places here. So I'm looking at $58.86. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 7 times 2 is 14. I have 2 decimal places to worry about here, so I need to move 2 here. So it's going to be $14.21, and we are good to go. Like I said, keep in mind you're going to have a calculator to do this, and it's very easy to type these numbers in the calculator, but I would like you to kind of know what's going on with the moving of the decimals, because once you get into something called scientific notation that you may deal with in some of your math classes, you'll need to know how that decimal moves when you multiply. So, give you a little experience using some money, just a little refresher hopefully, to kind of rack your brain a little bit on, so that if you do have to jump into some scientific notation, hey, it doesn't look as foreign to you. You know that decimals move. You got to account for the decimals you have, even when multiplying. So, appreciate y'all watching, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you at the next lecture.